The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Lewes again, everybody, for round 2. Now, we've seen Kingston near Lewes, and that was a fairly large village. Well, everything else that's between Lewes and Newhaven is a lump smaller. This one is not going to take me very long to walk around, but I do have 2 settlements to cover here. One of them is called Swanborough, which is where I'm standing right now. The other one is Iford. Iford, Yew or Island Ford. Hello again, East Sussexers. Today we're starting to make our way towards Newhaven here in Lewes, and the first parish you pass through on the way south from Kingston is the lovely little Iford. This one consists of 2 settlements, namely the village of Iford and the hamlet of Swanborough. Iford lies on the slopes of the South Downs in the valley of the River Ouse, which is away to the east. Unlike Kingston, there are several notable buildings in this one, including some 18 listed structures, a lot for a small one. The Greenwich Meridian also passes through Iford, and where it does so, it's marked by a sundial provided by a Millennium Commission Lottery Fund grant. The standout feature in the village is the Church of St Nicholas, which dates from the 12th century, although it was much restored in the 19th. It has an unusual arrangement because of its nave and chancel, which are separated by the tower. Otherwise, this episode will be a tale of 2 manors and their respective houses. Iford's Manor House is neo-Gothic and it was built in 1830. Although Grade 2 listed and pretty historically important, it can't compete with Swanborough Manor. That's a Grade 1 listed house incorporating fabric from the Grange of St Pancras, which dates back to the year 1200. Locally known as the Vale of the Brooks, east of it all is Lewes Brooks, a site of biological importance and part of the River Ouse's massive floodplain, which stretches almost all the way to the English Channel. We'll cover all that and more as we walk and drive through parish number 2 in Lewes. We start in the hamlet of Swanborough, which lies on the boundary between Kingston near Lewes and Iford, although the settlement is wholly within the latter. The name Swanborough is a little deceiving. The name came not from the type of bird you see so commonly on rivers and canals, but instead from the Saxon word swan. To them, swan or swain meant a herdsman. They would often be seen in the fields surrounding these villages. Borough in this context means hill, not fort. Swanborough then is literally Herdsman's Hill, and Swanborough Hill, which is marked on most modern maps, is a distinctive geographic feature around here. There can be no contest when it comes to Swanborough's most impressive building. That's this. Here you're looking at Swanborough Manor, which dates back to the 12th century. It was extended in the 15th century with an additional ceiling. Its gateway, great chimney breast, quatrefoil peephole and parts of a screen with arch blank panelling all date from that later time. Swanborough Manor was given a Grade 1 listing by English Heritage in 1952. It's had quite the list of owners in its time, including both King Henry VIII and Oliver Cromwell. More recently, it belonged to Rufus Isaacs, the first Marquess of Reading, and Stella Isaacs, the Marchioness of Reading. After her death, Stella, who was also known as Baroness Swanborough, donated it to the University of Sussex, and then it became a residence for its Vice-Chancellor. However, it was only used as the main residence of the Vice-Chancellor from 1985 to 1997. From 1971 to 1985, it was instead used as housing for postgraduates and lecturers. Vice-Chancellor Alistair Smith sold it in 2003, arguing the upkeep was too costly for the university. Baroness Swanborough's step-great-grandson, Simon Isaacs, openly criticised the university for selling it, adding that they should have striven to find ways to keep it for at least 50 years after her death. That was apparently her dying wish. To get between Swanborough and Iford, it's not a long walk, but I opted to drive it. Let's fill in a bit more about Iford as we do. The village sits within the Iford Estate, a 1,200 hectare area. The estate own most of the village and a lot of its surrounding land. Iford also sits within the boundaries of the South Downs National Park too. The Iford Estate considers itself heavily diversified. Its principal enterprises are still the production of cereals and beef, but it also has a range of properties and leisure facilities, which include shooting, fishing lakes, luxury accommodation, and even the ability to cater for light aircraft, thanks to a small airstrip north of the main village. The landscape to the west of Iford is impressive. It's the most treeless part of the South Downs, without the deep-cut bostels or tracks that are visible in other parts. Medieval traders and herders rarely descended Iford slopes compared to places such as Kingston. Iford Parish is notable for 3 hills: Front Hill, Iford Hill, and of course Swanborough Hill, which we already know about. Iford village doesn't have a lot, it's only a tiddler, but there is though a church, a village hall, and the impressive Iford Manor House. Let's go for a walk and see all of them. Okay, we are in Iford, and the hardest part of this episode has already been done. Swanborough was very difficult. It didn't look it, I'm sure, but trust me, from a filming perspective, it was quite hard. So this should be a lot easier. Iford is a very simple village, and we can walk around it in a nice, neat little loop. There's one name that will crop up quite a lot during the course of this village, and that would be Robinson. You'll see why by the time we get to the end. This is Iford's Village Hall, which is usually known more simply as Iford Hall. This was built by Joseph and Marion Robinson in 1931 in memory of their daughter Audrey, who died at a young age. That name, Robinson, is very important to Iford. The hall is currently available free of charge for all non-profit making village events in both Iford and Swanborough, and it's available for public hire, particularly for weddings. Iford Hall also has a notable feature on its wall. After the parish council were awarded £1,764 by the Millennium Commission, they hosted a village fete and sports day and installed a sundial on the outside of the hall. This is meant to mark the line of the Greenwich Meridian, which runs through the village. The sundial, which carries the date of July 2001, is mounted on the south-facing wall, and it's quite cool, you'll agree. The problem is it's in the wrong place. As it turns out, it's actually somewhat to the west of the Meridian's line. So I suppose you can think of the hall in and of itself a massive memorial. There's also another little memorial outside it in the form of this bench. This is for Amy Christmas, who looked after the hall for very many years. 1921 to 1998 is when Amy was around. And yeah, provides me with a nice little 5-minute stop, I suppose, before we continue walking around Iford. There are a few more things to catch, including the church, and that is our next thing to have a look at. Now we come to St Nicholas's Church, which stands at a northern corner of the village overlooking the wide expanse of Lewes Brooks. More on them in a bit. In the Domesday Book, Iford was listed as Nyward, and that settlement had a church. It wasn't this one though. The present building has a nave and a chancel, between which is a tower, possibly formed by raising an original chancel that predated the current one. This arrangement is rather unusual, giving the church a unique look. The old chancel was very much out of square, and the tower had to be twisted as it was raised to enable it to attain a rectangular plan at the roof level. The twisting was effected by curious set-offs on each face. The tower contains 3 ancient bells invoking Saints Botolph, Catherine and Margaret respectively. The nave and the original chancel appear to date from the early to mid-12th century, and the north chapel dates from the end of the 13th. The exterior shows flint facing with stone dressings. The eastern end of the chancel is lit by 3 lofty narrow windows, each of a single round-headed light. Above those windows is a plain circular light high up in the gable. The church possesses a Sheffield plate arms plate, a communion cup dating from 1674, and a silver flagon from 1864, presented in that year by Ruth Hurley. The building was restored in 1868 when the north arcade was discovered and opened, and traces of mural paintings, now no longer visible, were exposed. The church was again restored in 1874. A notable feature of the churchyard would be a pair of ancient elms which frame the western end of the church. The rest of the village is made up of houses and farm buildings which form part of the Iford Estate, which was founded in 1895 by Joseph Colgate Robinson. Often known as JCR for short, he came from a Quaker family of farmers and millers and became a noted breeder of pedigree dairy shorthorn and Guernsey cattle. He was also a pioneer of tubercle free milk production. Robinson established a successful retail farm bottled milk business in Hove and in Norbury in South London. The dairy shorthorn herd was the largest and best known in the country between the 1920s and the 1950s, and at one time held 2 world record milk production records for any breed. He built up the estate gradually, purchasing farms as they became available. By the end of World War II, he owned all of Iford and was renting Perching Sands Farm at Fulking and Houndine Farm at Lewes. He also set up his elder son, Harris, independently at North East Farm. Harris would be simply known by his initials too, HCR. After the war, there were 50 members of staff growing cereals and producing, bottling and selling milk. A pedigree bull was sold each week around the world. JCR died in 1962 and HCR continued modernising the farm. He introduced milking parlours for all 4 Iford dairy herds and also upgraded the dairy shorthorn cattle into the higher yielding red and white Frisian cattle. His son John, or JHR if you will, joined the business in 1970 when there were 35 members of staff. The dairy herds were continually expanded until at one point 650 cows were being milked in 5 units, and Iford then had the largest herd of red and white Frisians in the country. Unfortunately, dairy farming became increasingly unprofitable during the latter part of the 20th century, forcing the estate to sell off their cattle. The final herd was sold in 2003. The Iford Estate still farms this land though, and they're still running with business very much in mind. They acquired Swanborough Farm and the business of Greenwood & Son Limited in 2014. You see, this scenery here is why I was looking forward to doing this run between Lewes and Newhaven, because I knew there was plenty of it, and isn't it beautiful? If you live in Iford, you are very lucky to have this right on your doorstep, let me tell you. So we're going to complete this walk around Iford by using a footpath that runs along the front of a bright pink house called Sutton House apparently. This will take us back to almost the point where we started. Now I believe there's a little stream that runs underneath this path at some point, and that is also very pretty. Let's see if that's the case. The centre of the Iford Estate is the Manor House. Grade 2 listed, it was built in around 1830, predating the time of the Robinsons. It's built in the Tudor Gothic style and consists of 3 stories faced with knapped flints and stone coins. Of course, the Manor House is private property, and you can only see it from a distance by using a footpath which crosses its entrance drive. This will take us back to the start. Well, no little stream. I must have been thinking of someplace else, but more than making up for that is the downland scenery. Now you'll be seeing plenty more of that as this week goes on, because we now need to move on to the next village to the south, and all that, thankfully, will continue. To the east of everything you've seen in Swanborough and Iford, the landscape is very different. The parish sits on a slope which gently runs down into the valley of the River Ouse. The river has an absolutely massive floodplain which stretches from Lewes almost all the way down to the English Channel at Newhaven. It stops slightly short though, only going as far as South Ease. The floodplain is known as Lewes Brooks officially, although some call it the Vale of the Brooks instead. The brooks support a wide diversity of invertebrates, with water beetles being particularly well represented. There are also several rare snails, flies and moths on the brooks too. Here in Iford, the brooks are perhaps a little less biodiverse than in the surrounding parishes due to the intensive farming they've sustained in the last 50 years. That ties in nicely with the history of the Iford Estate. After JCR's death in 1962, when HCR was modernising things, one of the projects he took on was the draining of Lewes Brooks. This was done in an effort to increase the land available to grow cereals, as well as improve productivity and reduce labour costs. Beforehand, the area he drained was just an expanse of wet marshland, not really of any use to anyone. You can walk through the brooks using a footpath alongside the river. Dubbed the Sussex Ouse Valley Way, it's a track that starts at Lower Beeding in West Sussex and ends at Seaford in East Sussex. In Iford, that track runs along the easternmost boundary of the parish along the western bank of the Ouse, giving you a beautiful view of the brooks as you go. And we are done with Iford, so let's continue on southwards now towards Newhaven. The next village down the road is one that has a lot more than you might think. Some of its wartime past is now buried under a canopy of undergrowth. Shall we see if we can find it? I reckon it's a great idea. See you tomorrow. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.